right, so welcome to today's Psychic Healing Mastery bonus class. This class is all about looking at free will and timelines. I'm excited to share this with you because this is a class that I feel like was really important that we just didn't really get into. And it was important for some reason to give it time between the last session and this session. And funny enough, for those of us who've been on this call prior to me hitting the record button, we have been talking a lot about changes that have been going on. And so I just feel like this conversation about time in itself is timely. And I feel like it'll hit each and every one of us right where it's supposed to. So let's get right into it. I'm just going to start the presentation here. Can everybody see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so let's get into this conversation. So we're going to talk about free will, we're going to talk about timelines, and also ethical psychic discernment. So the whole purpose of this is to train practitioners like yourselves to basically read without intruding, and to sense things without trying to control them, because I think that's something that I know personally I've really struggled with, and work with timelines without unconsciously actually collapsing or distorting them. Because believe it or not, as practitioners, we influence other people's timelines. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that too, because your own thought processes can either expand or diminish somebody else with your beliefs if somebody's giving you that kind of permission to enter their field. So being responsible with that is really important. And really, this class, the whole purpose is to help you anchor more deeper into spiritual sovereignty, not only your spiritual sovereignty, but also to give more spiritual sovereignty to your clients. And I feel like, probably a lot of you are also really good at that. I'm coming out of a childhood of like my childhood kind of turned me into a control freak. So that part was really hard for me. And I'm still refining that because I feel like I'm not even close to where I want to be on that yet. But let's get into part one. So the sacred law of free will. Just because you can see something doesn't mean that you're meant to touch it. So this was really important because sometimes you'll see something about a client, and just because you have the psychic ability to see this thing, it doesn't necessarily grant you permission to share that, right? And sometimes we have to be able to use something that called ethical restraint, because every single soul that exists inside of a choice field, right? So there, we're going to learn the differences between how some moments are choice based, okay? Some moments are contractual, okay? And other moments, and I think you guys understand when I say contractual, like even like pre-birth soul contracts and things like that. And then some moments are just observer only, and your job is just to discern which field you're in before you're acting. Okay, so we'll start with this open choice zone, which is free will active. And these are basically the moments where a soul has multiple viable paths. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this with any of your clients, but sometimes I see my clients and I look into they're asking me questions about their future. And it's kind of like what's in this image here, right? Where it's like I can see that there's all these different pathways before them, and that they might be like really attached to one. And like my work is to show them take a step back because you have all these other doors before you, right? And these other doors that exist before you are other pathways that you can walk that are choice points, right? And it's not like there's a dominant timeline that is really locked in. It's more something that is more free will oriented and fluid, right? So the person who you're working with, this is where their soul sovereignty comes in, because this person has to be able to choose that timeline for themselves. And I'm sure you've been here yourself where you're like in a position, I know I've been here where it's like, okay, I feel like I have all these options and I just want someone to tell me what to do, right? This is like back in the day when I like didn't really understand this. And I just wanted to like go to a reader or a healer or a psychic and be like, just tell me what to do because I don't know. And it was like they were always giving me like the worst information in those times. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? Because like my ego would get so pissed because I'd want to know the answer. Like I would genuinely want someone to just tell me. And of course, that wasn't God's plan. So, of course, God wasn't going to give these guys any kind of leeway into my storyline to see what would be right for me because I had to choose. And fundamentally, in these cases, I actually started exploring this where if I had a client that I was shown, okay, they had like 5 or 6 different paths, I would start asking God to show me what happens if they go through this path? What happens if they go through this path? What happens if they go through this path? And believe it or not, every single path that I would see all had their magic, their own version of magic attached to it. And so it wasn't like one path is going to be doom and gloom. It was more just like, if you choose this path, you might like have to, sacrifice on this front, but then you'll gain so much on this front. And it was just this constant awareness that making a choice is important, but it's not always that we have to be so scared that we're going to make the wrong choice. I don't know if anybody ever feels that. So how can you know that this is showing up? The field feels really neutral. Usually, for those of you guys who've been doing this work for a long time, you'll probably know because you'll be like tuning into someone and you'll be like, oh, this is super in your field right now. Like this is active, right? But when this particular free will open choice zone shows up, it's like, no, actually, you could do this, you could do this. It's really spacious, it's undecided. You basically get options, but there's nothing that's super conclusive for the person. So your body will feel calm and you won't feel this like rush of urgency. And that's how you know that the person is going through this choice point stage where they have to really figure out for themselves what to do, right? And you're there to just witness, reflect, ask questions, and hold space. So you're not trying to give them direction in this case. You're really just having them reflect on what these choice points are, how they make them feel, listening to what's coming up for them so they can hear themselves, and just giving them a chance to talk through certain things. And that can be very helpful, right? But your job is not to predict outcomes, okay? Not to steer decisions, and definitely not insert your preference or add any sort of like caution or warning or pressure, because when you start interfering, then this is when karmic entanglement starts happening, right? And when karmic entanglement starts happening, that can get really, really dark, right? So there's like a way to just deal with this that I find simple, and I've already given you guys this tool in the first session, which is set the intention that you only get the information that you need, right? That intention in itself can be really beautiful. And sometimes you'll get information that you need for yourself because you need to witness something, because you personally could gain something from watching someone in this space, but you're still not supposed to share it. Okay, so it's really just kind of fine-tuning your awareness around this and seeing what is the right path right now. So that's the free will zone. Okay, now the contract zone is very different. It's total limited free will. And these moments basically involve things like soul agreements, karmic lessons, pre-chosen initiations, right? Things like that. And this part, yeah, this part can be hard for people to really get. I was just talking to a client yesterday who was like really upset over a karmic lesson she had to learn with a colleague. And she was like, oh, but you said it was divine when it was there and all these bad things happen. And it was like, yeah, and it was divine and all those bad things needed to happen because now you're clear of them in your energy field. They wiped it out. They wiped all the darkness clean through the experience, right? You can't it's like if you find that your clients are basically trying to work with you just so they can have a life of rainbows and unicorns, they're going to be disappointed very quickly, because we all have these. We all have soul agreements. We all have karmic lessons. We all have pre-chosen initiations, and we can't control that. We're not here to control other people's path, right? So we have to be careful with this kind of stuff and really look into, okay, why is this person going through this? What is their karmic lesson here? We could bring awareness to this, right? You might see this scroll, right? Like the scroll is really a beautiful metaphor for this, but essentially there'll be a sense of inevitability. You'll notice repeating patterns. You'll notice emotional charge mixed with clarity. So it's not like, remember how the free will one was very like non-urgent? This one has a little bit more urgency to it. Okay. And your intuition will feel very certain. Like you'll be like, yep, that's right. Because when something's not clear, it's not necessarily that your intuition's off. It's just that there's many choice points. Okay. But when something's super clear, usually this is like the one path that is the accurate, predetermined path, right? So your role in this case is basically just to name the lesson that they're learning in the contract you can help them to integrate that lesson more. Part of integrating it is also just looking at the pattern. I should have put that in there, but like just being able to look at the pattern and be able to say, okay, like, what does this bring up for you? Like, I remember like once I was in a situation with someone that was like a business partner, and like shit was hitting the fan so hard. And like we also had like a little relationship in the beginning where we dated, and then like all this stuff came up, and it was like so clear, like, oh, this is because my mom and dad work together and they actually do business together, and all the crap that I took on from my parents was being about, you know, how do you do business in a relationship and all this kind of stuff. It was just revealing itself through this very short, it was like a very short, like 3-month interaction or something. But after 3 months, I walked away feeling so much more free because I realized that I had been carrying the karmic um, entanglements and patterns of my parents, and how they were playing out love and money and business and all these kinds of things that got confronted in that relationship. So it actually served me in a bigger way. But if I wasn't aware of that, I would have looked back and been like, I don't know what that was about. Right. I don't know why that happened. But like when we actually look at why things happen, we can see, okay, it's actually bringing to the surface something, right? So as a practitioner, you can help people walk through this rather than around it. But here's what you're not supposed to do. So don't try to fix the experience, right? If you have that desire to save, take a breath and step back, because you're not supposed to fix other people's experiences. You're not supposed to remove them from their lessons. And you're not supposed to bypass the pain with positivity, because this is really the type of scenario where healers, their inner savior does get tempted, right? Like this is where you're like, oh, you're going through so much, let's just get you out of here. It's like, that's not up to you. It's very humbling, right? To be like, I don't have that kind of power over someone's life, and nor should I. So that is what it looks like when you have those pre-contractual agreements. And then we're going to get into the observer only zone. So this is where there's no interference allowed. Okay, this is basically the most important zone you have to master as a practitioner. And these moments occur when a soul has to arrive at the awareness all by themselves. And the timing is not for you to activate. Like you cannot play a role in this. Yeah. I'm going through this lesson right now on a deeper level. And really just like not speaking so that you don't distort their path, right? Here are some energetic indicators. If you feel tightness in the throat when you try to speak, take a step back and be like, what am I trying to say? And you know, sometimes you start sharing information, you start coughing and coughing, you're like, oh, that's like my soul telling me like, don't say anything. And then you just have to take a step back and realize I'm coughing for a reason here, right? It's not by fluke that all of a sudden my words can't come out. Like something is trying to stop this, right? Um, and just also like you'll find there's like a not yet feeling, and your body will just feel blocked. So again, the role, name the lesson, support the integration, provide the grounding, help them walk through it and not around it. So similar in terms of the other one as well. Again, don't try to fix the experience. Don't try to remove the lesson. Don't bypass the pain with positivity. Oh, sorry. And okay, sorry, that was the last one. I was like, why are these looking exactly the same? But it's actually similar, because whatever they're going through, you still want to make sure you don't interfere or try to save whatever they're going through. But this time you're just more silent, and you can pray for them. If there's somebody that you truly like have a soul connection with that you work with, I don't know if you guys have had those people where you're like, this isn't just a client, this is like somebody that you feel like a kinship with. I don't know if you felt that before. It feels very different when you're serving them, right, Trina? Like, it's like you're like, oh, this is not this is not like a typical client like interaction. This feels very deep to you. Then it gets even harder sometimes to not jump in. And then that's when I find like the prayer aspect does come in very handy, because you can just pray for the highest good of the soul. I've had to teach my mother how to do that for me because like I find that she gets into worry land a little bit too much. And I don't want that. I want what's for the highest good. If I have to go through a lesson, I just want my mom to hold space for me. And she's not quite able to yet, but I can kind of train her. So, those are those deeper connections. We can pray for others. We can have compassion for others without taking any kind of action and just trusting in divine timing. So if the information came without invitation, it may just be for you to hold and not deliver. So we're going to get into the second part of this, which is psychic gifts and timeline ethics. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have ever had clients that were like, hey, can you tell me when this is going to happen? Or can you like tell me, I don't know, it's like certain things on earth make us feel so pressurized, like whether it's a bill or just like a contract ending or some big legal um date, or taxes due, or whatever it is, right? Like this earth has put us in the illusion of timeline pressure. Right? Like we're so conditioned to having to meet deadlines and shrink our spirits to be able to adhere to certain timelines, right? But you cannot jump into your sessions with that fear and pressure as a practitioner. You have to look at it like totally different, right? Like right now I'm in a situation where I signed a year lease, right, in Tulum here, and I wanted to get out of it. And I didn't want to get out of it because I was trying to escape myself. I wanted to get out of it because God showed me a different path that I wasn't expecting when I signed the lease. And because God showed me that path, I trusted I'd be able to get out of it. And the landlord flew in from US yesterday and looked me in the eye and said, it's okay if you want to leave in March. And I was like, thank you, God. Right? Like if something is aligned, it doesn't matter the contract. It doesn't matter what was written. It doesn't matter the law. Even with the law, I have a crazy story of what happened on the weekend. If there's time after, I'll share it. But like, you just have to trust the guidance. You just have to trust the guidance and don't fall prey to somebody else's perceived fear of timing and pressure. Okay. So the core teaching with this one is that psychic perception is not passive. And your focus amplifies probability. So a lot of us don't realize how powerful we are when we're working with people. There's a lot that you bring to the table when you're working with someone. When you are projecting the highest and best outcome for somebody, you are amplifying their highest and best outcome. You are literally having a physical effect on their life, right? So when someone's coming to you and you're like maybe a little bit jealous of them, or maybe you feel like you don't want them to surpass you in some way, or maybe you feel like you put them in a box where they can't expand past where they've been coming to you for the same problem over and over again, that can start to affect their outcome, right? So really recognize how you're affecting the outcome that of the people that you're working with by taking personal responsibility for how, like what lens you're seeing them through, right? When you see somebody through the eyes of love, you believe they can get through anything. You believe that they're capable of healing anything. You believe that their ability to get through whatever they're going through, they'll be successful in that, right? All that stuff. But specifically here, I want to talk about how we're also observing probability fields when we're looking into people's timelines. Okay, so probability fields are basically what's available right now, right? Like what is available right now. Like I work with this one client where she asks questions about her potential clients that are looking to working with her, right? And these are like big decisions. And every time I look at the clients, I notice, or the potential clients, I notice that in different times, their energy is changing. Sometimes they're like more inclined to work with her. Other times they're not as inclined to work with her. And this can vary from week to week when I check in. And I find it very interesting that we're just looking at probability fields. We're just looking at this time right now, the probability of this happening is about this. I don't know if you guys work in percentages. Sometimes I get downloads in percentages. I love working in percentages. So sometimes I just get the information, it's about 20% likely or 30% likely. And then that can change, right? But it's just in this moment. You have to recognize that what you're seeing is just the probability in this moment. It doesn't mean that it's not going to change tomorrow. As you know, we all have, different types of free will choices. that can influence what the outcomes are. So that's really important to know. Your beliefs influence which timeline gains energy. If you have a particular timeline as a practitioner that resonates more with you personally, and you start amplifying that towards your client is more likely to experience that timeline. Okay. So it's kind of a big deal when you're working with someone, because how you perceive their timeline affects their timeline, right? And so this is why fear-based attention can collapse unwanted outcomes into reality. Because if you start seeing through the eyes of fear anybody's timeline, you can actually harm that person. If you start going into worry, if you start going into getting caught up in 3D without paying attention to the 5D energy, you're automatically hurting somebody without realizing it. And that's why you have to be so careful about what kind of information you allow into your energy field and what kind of information you're putting out into the world as well. Because because you guys are all leaders in your own right, right? And as leaders, you have impact. And if you have impact, your impact can be positive or negative, right? Or it could just be authentic, more so. But if it's the type of impact that is causing more worry, I'm trying to think of an example, right? Like, look at those people out there who promote like veganism, right? There's people that are like vegans and they're very excited to be vegans, and they promote it, and they promote it with love, they promote it with excitement, they promote it with purpose, they promote it with passion. They don't say anything negative about people who aren't vegan. And they don't overly try to persuade. They just live their life, and they impact through food photos and talking about their, how they're feeling and whatever it is. Like that is a positive way to put out your lifestyle. But if you're a vegan and you decide that you're going to start telling people all the scary reasons that they shouldn't be not a vegan, like you're basically putting fear into people, right? And so to be a person of impact, it's like you want to lead even within your sessions or publicly. You want to lead from a place of, this is what I love and this is what feels good to me, right? Like you guys saw probably yesterday, I made a post about gray hair or my silver hair, but I didn't tell the world, you're bad if you dye your hair, right? I didn't say, oh, this is really atrocious that we're living in a society where everybody's fake. No, I didn't say any of that. I just spoke my personal truth. This is why it makes sense to me, right? And I think that is how we have to go about things in the highest frequency, because what's authentic to you is going to impact somebody. But the moment you go into teaching and preaching from a place of fear, concern, or worry, and putting doubt or caution too much forward into people's minds, then you actually start affecting them in a negative way. So I just want to put that out as well, because I think that's really important as practitioners to have that level of ethics, to be mindful of that. So let's go into the two different types of timelines here. So the first one is the fixed timeline, which we've talked about the contracts, right? So again, these are like soul agreements, births, deaths, initiations, certain meetings, or even awakenings, right? Yeah, it's so cool. I'm talking to someone right now who had a 7-day awakening, and every single day he was like given specific information that affected like the rest of his life. And he's like, these 7 days were like the most amplified 7 days of his life. And it was like clearly like this was like your awakening timeline, like this is where your soul was like, during these 7 days on earth, I'm going to go through this, and it's going to change the course of my entire life, right? So we all have these types of things that are playing out. Even the channeler Cryon talks about this, where he says like our DNA is coded to unlock sometimes at certain points in our life, right? So when we hit a certain time, it's like, okay, now this is when your DNA unlocks this part of you. This is the time where this DNA unlocks this part of you. And it's all meant to happen at specific time points, right? So how will you know that this is playing out? You'll just feel a calm sense of certainty. Again, you won't feel an emotional charge here. it'll repeat across readings. So if somebody's working with you, say for like a long period of time, you might get like over 5 or 6 sessions working with them, the same message might coming up like in 3 years from now, this will all come to a close and you'll see why it happened. It's like maybe it just keeps repeating so the person can prepare themselves for the length of the journey that they're in, right? Um, and this also comes with acceptance rather than fear, right? It's not about saying you're doomed forever. It's just saying, well, this cycle right now is serving a purpose, right? Like it's really important to see that, you know, like I have this other guy that I was talking to who's on house arrest right now. And he was just like, I don't know how I got in this situation. And I said, well, let's look at it all. Let's dissect all this. And then we're like going through his charts and like looking at everything. And I'm like, you are actually exactly where you need to be right now. Right? Like, this house arrest is actually in line with your astrology and everything that I could see. And, you know, I think he was kind of like, oh, I didn't think that I could ever get to a place where I could just accept what's happening. It's not that, you know, you have to stop wishing for a better life, but there is probably a lesson in there for you, right? Before you can move on. So, you know, these types of things will also help your clients realize there's value in seeing a cycle and understanding that something is a phase or a cycle and it's necessary, right? So how do you work with these people? Well, you can prepare their nervous system, offer grounding tools, support the embodiment of the lesson. And essentially the whole purpose of these types of timelines is that they don't change, right? However, how we experience this does, right? Like I'm in a timeline still where my daughter is not sleeping through the night. She's almost 2 years old, right? I've had to go through a lot to handle the timeline, but I know at some point she will sleep again, or not again because she never has, but she will sleep, right? At some point. Or I will sleep really at some point if she doesn't ever sleep. So it's just really important to recognize that there is lessons for us, right? The second type of timeline is the fluid choice-based timeline, right? So these can affect like relationship outcomes, business success or failures, healing trajectories, and emotional states. So sometimes a business will be successful long before the timeline where it's 100% supposed to be successful, right? Sometimes a relationship will actually heal faster than the timeline says it should heal because the two people decided to heal whatever was in them and come together in love and acceptance, right? Like there's so many things that can shift based on our choice points. So this is where the fluid choice-based timelines come in, where we can actually help people to see, look, if you choose this path right now, this particular issue can soften quicker, right? It's just a matter of sometimes forgiveness work. I feel like, I don't know how you guys feel about this because you all have experience as well, but for me personally, one of the things that I've noticed fast tracks time like nothing is forgiveness work. It's like the moment someone forgives something that is like so hard for them to forgive, it's like their whole timeline changes. Like everything changes. I've noticed that forgiveness also includes self, right? It's like if you are constantly feeling unconsciously guilty about a choice that you made in the past and you keep punishing yourself, even if it's just like a record playing in your subconscious, that will affect your choices and your timeline, right? Whereas if you can just forgive yourself, you know, accept the part of you that made those choices and move on, your whole future can change as a result of that, right? So having this awareness that there is fluid choice-based timelines available for your clients or yourself, this is going to open up space for people to feel more empowered, right? So again, you'll kind of see this like multiple branching paths, shifts depending on someone's mindset, strong emotional reactivity you might feel, or just changes based on attention, right? Like sometimes you put attention to one thing and then or sometimes maybe you've even found that the moment you say something or the moment your client says something, the timeline changes. Have you guys ever noticed that? Where it's like, as soon as they declare this, or as soon as they commit to this, or as soon as you highlight this, it's like everything just falls into place, right? So that's very possible when things are super fluid. I really like, there's like this moon. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's like this moonology deck. I can't remember what it's called, but in this deck of cards, it's like an oracle deck. There's one card that says, things are not yet set in stone. And I just, when I first saw that card, I was like, wow, you know, like this is a thing. This is a thing where things are just not set in stone yet. And how things show up really will depend on everybody's choices involved. So really cool to observe that. What you want to make sure you don't do is, again, anchor fear-based futures into anybody's mindset. That's why they say, like, even when people get sick, right? It's like sometimes if they're told by a doctor that they have a year to live, they only live a year. But sometimes if they're not told anything, they end up living longer. So sometimes just being told something about the future can actually significantly impact somebody else's timeline, especially if they see you as an authority figure, especially if they outsource some of their power to you, right? Which is quite common. So just be careful, again, not to say specifically, this is what's going to happen, right? And do not predict timelines that are disempowering by any means. Anything that's disempowering, revisit it within yourself and see if where that's coming from within you, right? The best way to go forth with this is to just frame possibilities, right? Help people realize, if you choose this, this is an option. If you choose this, this is an option. If you choose this, this is an option. You want to emphasize agency all the time. Give people the awareness that they are in charge, that the choice is theirs. And if you are super intuitive and you tend to, or psychic, and you tend to take on a lot of over responsibility for others, you might unconsciously start wanting to impose choices on other people or impose information, but you're actually removing the person's agency and creating dependency, right? So you always also want to redirect to the present moment choice. Don't get too caught up in the future, because the future obviously always is responding to the now. So the future doesn't exist yet because it depends how you show up now, right? How you show up now is what affects your future. So that's really important to know as well. So we're going to get into the third part here now, which is the thought reality feedback loop. So this is why psychics should be mentally clean. And the key teaching here is that your thoughts are not neutral when you're intuitive. So when you have, when you have repeated psychic focus, that strengthens the possibility. So the more that you psychically look into one particular probability, the more that probability gets crystallized, right? Also, fear-based scanning creates interference. Like if you're always looking for, oh my God, is this bad thing going to happen? Is this bad thing going to happen? Is this bad thing going to happen? It's actually distorting the truth, right? Because the truth is based on love 100% of the time, not on fear. So if you're giving all your attention to somebody's fear or your own fear in session, or even just within yourself, you're not observing from love, right? You're observing from the eyes of fear, right? Also, obsessive timeline checking weakens sovereignty. This can happen with clients that are like super impatient, where they just like always want to be like, can you check into this again? Can you check into this again? And they're just basically outsourcing everything to you to check into, because they're obsessed about wanting to feel something that they're not feeling right now. This is also going to weaken their sovereignty, and that's not healthy for either of you, because you're creating codependency through that, right? So if you're misusing your gifts, you're basically compulsively checking on outcomes, you're seeking certainty instead of presence, you have anxiety after doing readings, or you constantly need reassurance. And the correction practice for this is to just return to your body, return to your breath, and return to the now, because power lies in presence and not prediction. And also, we're taught that, I should speak for myself here. I've been taught that when you have knowledge of the future, you have some kind of power, and that is really toxic, right? To believe that and really like internalize that from an egoic place, it can be really toxic. So just realize that you don't have to keep psychically checking things to make you feel like you have power or control, or that you know what's going on. Really, if there's something you're not getting, you're just not getting it, and that's okay. Just be present with that. You don't have to obsessively check things. And then the fourth part of this is all about discernment, right? So you can basically just place one hand over your heart, and you can even just ask yourself, is this moment asking me to act? Is it asking me to witness? Or is it asking me to step back? That's all. You have three choices. You can act with your client, say something, do something, reveal something. You can just witness, which in a lot of cases just looks like holding space. Or you can step back, where it's like you let them have their own experience, and you don't even interfere at all, right? And here you can use things like your body sensations, emotional tones, or urgency versus neutrality to help you feel into which one is correct for this moment, right? The second thing that you can do is do a timeline integrity test, right? So when you're receiving future information, you just ask, does this empower or restrict the client? Does this create more fear or clarity for the person? Or does this invite presence or obsession? I found that people that have obsessive tendencies, or that are obsessed with getting information, there's a big, strong no that my spirit does to getting more information for that person. And it's not because they don't deserve that information or they can't access it. It's because if they did access it, it would just add fuel to their obsession. You know, sometimes people are just obsessed with certain things and outcomes. And if you start feeding their obsession, you're basically playing the game with them, right? So that's, again, a way to reduce urgency. So don't share it in that case. Be very cautious and mindful about how you're affecting other people as well. Because the goal is to always help people feel like they can be present, and they can have choice, and they can feel like they're in power. They're in their own sovereignty and power, right? The third practice is really just asking, from an ethical standpoint, does it bring peace? If it brings peace, great. If it creates urgency, pause, right? There is a divine sense of urgency where you'll feel like it doesn't come from fear, but it comes from like, do this pretty quickly. But usually in that case, I find that the person is already feeling that urgency and they're already on board with it. So you don't have to fuel it further. You can just validate that what they're feeling is on the correct timeline. And again, if it does inflate ego, be cautious with that too, because it's very common for people to want to come to psychics and healers to get information to fuel their ego. And a lot of times, as a practitioner, you might have an unconscious desire for someone to come back to you or like you, or you might be a people pleaser. So you might unconsciously say things just to inflate their ego. And that's also not coming from the right place. You can say something to the soul that will also help their ego, but you don't do it just because you want to inflate their ego, if that makes sense. So there's a bit of a psychic oath here that you can read out loud. And since you guys are all muted, I don't know if you're in a space where you can read this out loud, but this is the psychic oath, right? It's, I honor free will as sacred. I read with humility, not control. I trust divine timing over my desire to know. I choose presence over prediction, and I serve clarity, not certainty. If you can say this oath to yourself regularly, it's going to help you to feel more centered in your role. Because if you are somebody that gets easily decentered, this will help you come back to your center when it comes to working with timing, when it comes to working with agreements, contracts versus free will, when it comes to understanding what's fluid and what's not. These are all going to protect you from making choices that could negatively affect your clients. All right, so you guys have access to the slide deck. These slides were just added to the deck that you already have access to, so you can always come back here or just rewatch this video, write this down. And what's going to happen is that the more you read through this and the more you feel into it, you're going to really start to feel more and more connected to what God is doing with you, and how God wants to use you versus how you think you're supposed to be used or how you think you're supposed to serve. Some of the biggest breakthroughs I've had this week is people just wanting to share their stories with me and me not having time to respond. And what I've learned is that when my attention goes to their story with love, without me even like commenting on it or responding or anything, I just send them love and I'm like, this is their story. I understand it. I have compassion for it. I send it love. It's like they feel it. They literally feel it. And then they'll write me back later and be like, thank you. And like, I don't even say anything, and it's just so beautiful when you can find a way to do this in 3D with so much intention that people do actually feel your love, and they feel that what you have to offer is beyond words, right? It's just with your intention. So gonna leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for being here. I would love to hear from you guys how this connects with you, how it speaks to you. What parts of this conversation today have evoked something in you or something that you learned. Anyone have anything they want to share?
Hi.
Megan?
Um,
Hi.
I have noticed that that last thing you talked about, that's occurred with a lot of my clients where it's like I'm not even there to fix. I'm literally just there to amplify and hold space for what they're processing. And like the last client I had, I thought it was going to be like, like a deep reading, and it ended up being her talking about her childhood. Because I mean, I did tell her I saw something as she asked a question. I said something about the childhood, and then she spent like 30 minutes maybe just sharing that, and then she got really weepy and cried. And I've just noticed like the power of just holding space over, it can still like throw in a few bits of information that might prompt them to a certain memory, but that space holding and that ability for them to talk is sometimes the medicine that people need over like, oh, I see what's going to happen, or I see this or that. So
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Megan. Yeah, everybody's different, I find. Some people, I feel like they've talked enough when I meet them, and I feel like they just want to talk more. And I'm like, no, your spirit doesn't want to talk anymore. like I think it's time to just get to the truth. And other times people haven't had a chance to talk enough to somebody that can hold space. And then it's like, God's like, no, just listen. And I feel like it kind of depends on the person a lot of times, at least for me. But that's cool. Thanks for sharing, Megan. Yeah.
but that's good to
Anyone
know
else have?
too.
Mhm.
Just sorry to interject, but that's good
Go
to know
ahead.
too that it's
Yeah.
maybe not always the best thing to be discerning about that too.
Yeah.
So to
Because
know. Mhm.
Yeah, because like I had a teacher that was a psychosomatic practitioner, and she always said to me, be careful about the rabbit hole. That's what she called it. It was the rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole is basically when someone takes you down their victim story, and all they want to do is what they're subconsciously doing is they're trying to pull you in to have sympathy. They're basically they're speaking from trying to put a hook on you so that they can pull you in to feel sorry for them. And so I'm just very discerning about that in particular, because I find that like I'm not available for feeling sorry for people when I'm doing God's work. Like you cannot do God's work and feel sorry for people. It's not gonna, like, that's just, the two will not coexist, right? Um to have compassion is one thing, but to feel sorry for another person is lowering your energy to meet somebody where they're not even in that place. They just think they're in that place, right? And so there's something really special about recognizing if someone wants to take you down the rabbit hole and being like, and sometimes I'll call it out. It's like, I feel like I feel like your misery wants some company right now. Like sometimes they'll just have the courage to say it. And they'll admit it, because when you speak the truth, people do feel seen and loved, even if it's harsh. So yeah, just something to consider. Thank you, Megan. Yeah. Anyone else have anything they want to share from what they learned today or that we talked about? Rosa?
Um, yeah, actually, I thought of a couple of clients as you were speaking, and uh, and some validation. Um, in my approach recently. Um, just in a nutshell, a regular client treats me sometimes like I'm her therapist, like only her therapist, and
Mm.
she's been in therapy for many years with therapists. Um, and so um, I try to limit the time because sometimes I often go all over with this person quite a bit. So it's not just because of that, but it's actually showing me that I needed to just tell her, um, not that I'm not her therapist because that is part of my practice, but it's also just uh, not catering to the sympathy, not catering to also imposing on my free will at times because she's imposing on her own free will, right? So, because she's perpetuating her victimhood by telling the same story over and over again, even if she thinks it's coming from a different angle. So, I finally did a couple of times now, I've actually said to her, um, you don't have to be a victim of that anymore. And if you continue to talk about it, you'll just continue to perpetuate that within your energy field. So that was asking her to choose a different timeline in a sense, right? So that's a great way that you worded it. That's the way I saw it anyway, the way you were wording it. Yeah, so that I was reminded of that. And then, another client, in the recent past, but constantly asking for, um, well, what do you see? What do you do? And asking that person to constantly ask that person, what do you think? What do you feel? What do you see? Well, let me know what you think. What do and it's like, understanding, and that person doesn't come to me as often because I needed to let her know that, you know what, it's time to for you to do the work as well. You can't just ask me for validation and that sort of thing because we're at some point we don't want the validation. We want the clarity, the certainty that we have some kind of power within our own energy, right? So that was reminding me of all that and just being like, okay, that's it's good to go down those paths instead. It's important to go down those paths because empowering myself, but empowering others as well as I am in service, right? So thank you for that. Very nicely
Yeah.
put, all of it. So beneficial. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Rosa. Yeah. And you're actually doing your client a big favor by helping them realize they have a choice at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
awesome.
beautiful gift
Thank
to
you.
just know I have a choice. I don't have to feel like this anymore, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rosa. Mhm.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything they want to share? Rosa?
Hi.
Hi.
Um, I have questions actually, specifically
Hmm.
about the timelines and the fixed timelines, because you shared some really beautiful stories. And I'm just going through certain sessions that I've had in the past, and I've noticed that sometimes when I'm having a conversation with somebody, they're telling me what's going on, and we're already mid-healing, and they're saying something, and I'll be like, no, that's a story. I like keep pushing away some of the things that come up, and I'm like, after the fact, I'm thinking, was that rude? And then in the moment, I'm like, I don't have time to think about that because they're already moving the energy. So let's just move with the energy. Is so I think where I am confused, I think it's just my cognitive mind confused because in the moment when we're channeling it. I feel like I don't have a problem. It's just the mental game of I'm sitting with a person, we're having a conversation. I can see the timeline and I can see them choosing timelines and their perspective of timelines. Is it our role to help them like to provide sorry, I'm like answering the question and I keep getting the answer. It's like it's whatever's in the moment. So
It's always in the
um
moment for sure.
yeah, it's in the moment. It's like it's so nuanced when you're with somebody and it's like it's never the same thing. So for me to try to bucket it into a specific thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But to your original concern about when you're working on somebody and they're still telling the story, what I find is personally when I've seen that happen, them telling the story is actually their spirit rejecting the healing. right? When you're, it's like,
Oh,
that's how I've seen it many times where it's like, I'm basically clearing something major out of somebody, and that one thing that I'm clearing, now they're trying to fight for it, but being like, but this is the way it is, right? And it's like the resistance. And then that's when I realize maybe I'm pushing too hard to try to clear something that they're not ready to clear yet. And I have to take a step back, because sometimes we think, oh yeah, this person's coming to me for this and they want to clear this. So you assume obviously that they're prepared, but in a lot of cases they're not. You know, in a lot of cases they're saying that they're prepared, but their energy is actually not
yeah. There's like multiple layers that are
not
wanting to
prepared for
be,
that,
yeah.
you
So
know,
there's like
because
multiple
some part
layers.
of them is still resisting.
There's a
Layers
little
to
bit of
it,
a
yeah.
lag. So like you're speaking and
Oh,
I'm like, yeah. So
sorry.
there's like multiple layers because there may be one part of them that is ready and they're like, okay, I'm so ready, but then there are other aspects that we don't know about until we're mid healing, and so that's really
But you can
interesting.
actually speak to those aspects mid healing, and that's what I've learned to do. Be like, is there some part of you that's afraid to have this kind of a breakthrough because it would mean this, this, and this? And that they're just like, oh yeah. And I'm like, are you willing to let that go? And they're like, oh yeah. And then it go, you know, it keeps going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. That's in alignment with what I've been experiencing because it does feel like a dance. It's like, okay, we're ready to go. Okay, let's like take a step back and like let's soften this aspect. That aspect is soft, feel safe, and then we can move forward. And yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I
cool.
like the way you label that as softening. That's really cool. I love that you said that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
softening. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Marcel. Great. Trina, anything you want to share? Oh, 1 second. I'll ask to unmute you. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing really to share, just other than thank you for bringing these aspects in to
Yeah,
like complete the course.
yeah. I felt like without doing this, it was incomplete. Like it just felt like, it's like, how many times do people ask me about timelines and choices? And like, how could I not put that in this course? Like, duh. So thank you guys for your time and just being present for this. And the recording for this will also be made available. So you guys can revisit at any point as well. Awesome. So good to see all of you guys again too. Megan, did you have something you want to share?
I just want to add one last thing. I remember when we were in the alignment tribe, and I would ask you, "Was this the highest timeline?" And you were like, "You're like, you have to get out of that thinking, like about like what's the highest timeline." And like you're like, because like it's happening at all times, at any time. Like, so I thought that was really profound. And that kind of ties into what you're talking about, is like the presence, the embodiment, the like that intruding, and like maybe all of it's the highest timeline because we can switch at any moment, and like empowering people to know that, yeah, as opposed to like, yeah. So yeah, so
Yeah,
I just wanted to throw that out.
fascinating. It's fascinating. Awesome. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here. So beautiful to see you, and I look forward to being in touch. Take care. Bye.